2026, seeking professional family therapy in America is increasingly spoken aloud. Approximately 40% of families in the U.S. seek at some point, according to the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy, the AAMFT. So the question is today, is therapy becoming a solution or a symptoms? Welcome back to another episode of Chatting with Slava the Jordanian. I'm your host, STJ. And to answer this question, I decided to bring back a returning guest, Elizabeth Shahid, who is a licensed marriage family therapist and owner of Your Story Therapy in Birmingham, Alabama. She's been practicing for approximately 12 years. So thank you, Elizabeth, for coming on today. I hope you had a great holidays and a happy new year. So I have some data which is very interesting and almost like eye-opening. And I just want to dive into what you think from your part of the world where you're at dealing with, family dynamics, rendering the service of therapy to kids and families. So it says here, 6 in 10 parents have considered or are seeking therapy for their families in the United States. That's the first part of data. And according to the CDC, about 11.5% to 13.8% of children aged 5 through 17 received counseling or therapy in 2021 through 2022, in comparison to only 10% of 2019. I kind of know maybe the answer for that. COVID was a huge thing too, is post-COVID. But these are the research data that I stumbled on that really inspired, I need to call Elizabeth. I have to have her on. Let's see from your professional point of view where we're at as a country. So I guess let's start with my first question to you is why more American families are seeking therapy, in your opinion?
Yes, in my opinion, because not an expert on all families, but usually people come to therapy because they want someone or something to change. And so it could be, there's so many different reasons why families come to therapy. But it's usually that they want something or someone to change. And so I don't know, you mentioned COVID, and I do see a lot of clients coming in because of, just like long-lasting effects of COVID, whether it's on their physical health or whether it's about kind of some social adjustments that they weren't able to kind of adjust to during the lockdowns, or maybe because of things that have kind of shown up within their family or their community or their friends, or even within themselves that they've learned through the social isolation.
So it sounds like social isolation, which is a huge thing. We had to deal with it as a dental practice. We have 3 dental practices, 2 in New Hampshire, 1 in Massachusetts. So across the border, the way, for example, the state of Massachusetts dealt with COVID, the lockdown, in comparison to how New Hampshire dealt with the COVID lockdown. And that had an impactful effect to how people actually came out later, reopened their life into society. So to give you an example for Massachusetts, as far as a dental facility or a medical facility, they were following like Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire. So if New Hampshire says, wear masks, you're okay, keep the 6 feet distance between you and the person next to you. Massachusetts, implemented that. Then the following week, Vermont comes out with a different kind of policy. They implemented that. They adapted that. New Hampshire says, only capacity in restaurants. We can do only 25%, have people come in restaurant as long as your capacity does not go above 25%. They adapted that. So it was very confusing for people. So we have team members, we had patients that lived in Massachusetts, worked in New Hampshire or lived in New Hampshire, worked in Massachusetts. So they were commuting or even working remotely. Some of them had to commute because the nature of their work could not just be remote. They were very confused, so they had to adapt and conduct themselves in a certain way in Massachusetts, and then move back, drive back to New Hampshire to their family. All the rules are different. So mentally, I think it was so exhausting, as if you are every day commuting from one country to the other. So I think this statistics in comparison to, 2019, it went from 10% to 11.5%, up to 13.8% of children age 5 through 17 were getting therapy. So social isolation, as you know, with children that young, is very important. They pick up their social skills, self-awareness, social awareness, confidence, and then they're cooped up through all the 3 months. And some of their families, even after the world opened, they were just scared, whether their grandparents are compromised or the child is compromised, like, no, don't go out. So they were cooped up for about 6 months, some of them to a year. And those are the people that I've spoken to. So this is just observational data, every day's life. So I think COVID did a number on definitely our children, our kids' social skills. But going back to you've been practicing for about 12 years. So 12 years, that's, you have witnessed that. You started your career pre-COVID, and then you continue your career post-COVID. I'm not sure if Alabama as a state was not compliant. Maybe they just, Florida kept it all open. So do you see that as a effect on, your clientele, your basically the growth of the business, or how common is therapy right now comparing to, before 2019?
Yes. Before 2019, truly from my experience, I've seen that people come in for a variety of reasons. It really does not, the same things that people were coming before 2019, people are coming for things now, for the same reason as they were before COVID. But now there's just an extra layer of younger people, specifically the college age students that I see are the ones who struggle the most, maybe socially a little bit. And so some of them are coming in saying, I'm struggling to, it's kind of hard to find, because right now I'm working with college age students, and some of them are freshmen, sophomores. And so they're already kind of having a difficult time figuring out how to socialize now that they're not with their family. They're living in dorms now. And so, they are trying to adjust. But in the very beginning, maybe 2021, 2022 is when I did see people saying, a lot of people who are concerned about their health or maybe their family's health, struggling to figure out, how do I go out into society now, when I've been so afraid of getting myself sick or other people sick. So I see that. And then I also see some people who are like, I just don't know how to socialize. I don't know how to carry on conversations. It's slowly becoming less of a conversation now, but they still, when they sign up, I see they kind of check mark how COVID has affected them. And they'll say things like, it's affected, social, it's affected finances, it's affected kind of like how I feel about people. If they've gotten, during 2020, there was a lot of conversation about society and, if things are okay, if things are not okay, and government. And so maybe like clashes and arguments between family or friends. So it's really a variety.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I don't think we are, even if you do the research, and I've been researching a little bit, I tend to go down the rabbit hole, because I just love data, and it's a reflection of reality in compared to my, observational data from what I hear from my patient. My patients are very comfortable telling me exactly what's affecting them. And you're right, finances now, with everything that's going on around the world, I do fear for the young generation, because there is a lot going on.
Yes.
And I hate to say it, the impact of social media and misinformation they get through social media. And I discussed it with other guests as far as how social media is double-edged sword. It could be really good for certain purposes, but also it could be hard, just like anything in your life, anything in the world, that if you overuse it, right, and if you play upon it so much, then it can actually fire back at you. And you find out it's like, okay, this is just harmful to my mindset, my well-being, my mental health, and I need to drop it, but I can't drop it because the whole world is operating upon it. Do you know what I'm saying? So the shift in culture all around the world, like I was in Egypt in 2024, 2025, the culture, the traditional culture and classical culture is still intact, that society needs to teach our children the self-awareness and social awareness. Yeah, there is digital devices all around the whole country, just like United States, runs on digital devices and AI and technology. But there's certain parts of the world, the society is regulating that, and it's frowned upon to have it like 100% manipulating your life, 100% guiding your children, 100% teaching your children. There's still that, traditional tribal connection to maintain and preserve that, culture. And again, when these kids, like you said, finish high school, they go away for college, they leave home, they live the safety net, basically. They don't feel like, I don't know how to conduct myself in society. I don't know how to, pay for my coffee. I don't know how to order my coffee. I don't know how to order a meal. I don't know how to go and open a bank account or ask questions about my medical insurance or dental insurance if they end up with jobs. So these things we deal with in our offices. These young professionals, super smart, super capable, very, very, very intelligent, but don't ask them about, do you know anything about your dental insurance? I have no idea. I was like, all I know is my company said, buy this, I buy it, and I bought it, and then I'm paying the monthly. So that everyday skill, and they travel. They are world travelers, and they're fearless about travel. I have a very young woman, like 17 years old. She's at Alvern in Hudson High School. She's been to Spain for 3 months. Now she's in Iceland for 3 months.
Wow.
Fearless. They are just so, borderless as far as, their mindset. Like, I want to go, I want to adventure. But when they come home, they cannot, like I said, if you ask them to go open a bank account, there's absolutely no way they can do it. So they're very dependent or codependent. And when it comes to and this is the Northeast, what I'm saying? Like, you're surrounded by big cities. There's hustling lifestyle, commuters, people juggling their lives, but they still so sheltered as far as, this is your responsibility. You're going to take accountability, going through the process of opening a bank account, going through the process, even going to urgent care and trying to give them your insurance card or, pay for your copay. They completely freeze because we see it in the dental offices. So I agree with you. The culture has shifted. I don't know about the South, but up here in Northeast, it's a little bit different, but you can come in if you have any comments on that.
That's interesting. I'm in Alabama, and in Alabama, I think people maybe didn't take COVID as seriously. I did because of my people who are immunocompromised in my family. So whatever other people were doing didn't matter to me. I just had to do what I needed to do. But as far as the culture here in Alabama, I see a lot of students who kind of a range, but I think, what you're talking about kind of depends on how much their parents maybe allow them or teach them, what to do. If you have parents who are, taking care of your finances, who care, they might not care if they have a bank account. They're using that one that their parents maybe add into, or,
do you think there is a phenomenon that parents, because of social media, parents are trying to protect their kids from like scams, because there's a lot of that, from, let me do it for you, because they feel they're a lot more in control to protect those kids, not to get scammed, not to get conned, by different things, because I hear stories, like I said, from our young professionals, even in our teams, like, oh, Dr. Slava, you won't believe what just happened to me. I'm like, why would you even do that? Like, why would you trust them? It's like, oh, I thought it was okay because it was legit. No, it's not legit. Do you think that's why
a young person?
The role of social media? What's that?
How old is this person who's saying this?
Oh, in their 20s, mid-20s. Professionals. Assistant, hygienist. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
What sort of scam?
Like anything, like they order something online and somebody takes their information, or they will trust a product, or they want to be part of some kind of a membership or whatever, and they found it was a scam and they took their money and then they didn't send the product or something like that. So maybe parents, they know that there is that culture out there through social media, and then they just want to protect the kids. But what's that's happening? Maybe it's good for your business, because a lot of people, signing up for therapy, trying to learn these things. But this is, come and think of it, like this is the new generation. If this generation is not ready to really take on that responsibility and conduct themselves independently of their parents. Of course, social and emotional support, that's awesome. But when it comes to practicality, applying themselves, a lot of them, they're still living with their parents. And those I know how much they get paid. They paid very, very well, and they can afford living on their own here in the Northeast, but they choose not to because they feel, like I said, it's that comfort blanket. It's like the safety net. It's like, no, I'm scared. There's a lot of fear out there.
Sure.
So do you see that in your practice?
You know what's interesting? There's so many things that you said that I've been thinking about. I think that's a very real thing, is that there's this fear of what will happen in the future. I'm not so sure of. I need to protect what I have. And that's something that we see across generations, depending on your circumstances, right? We talk about, like, in America during the Great Depression, people were saving pennies, crumbs, so like then the next generation after that, their kids were holding on to everything, and then their kids were holding on to everything to not throw anything away just in case we need it. And then there are some people who've come from nothing, and they for generation after generation before, not in America, let's say immigrants. And so from their background, maybe they've experienced, oh, it's okay. We've lost everything before. We'll gain everything back again. No problem. We can get rid of this because one day we'll get something again. So it really just depends. But I think it's interesting that you mentioned children or younger people falling for scams, because in my mind and from what I've seen is that it could be the opposite. And maybe I'm looking at maybe the older generation of people who don't understand technology, and they'll click on something, whereas there are their younger generation of people who work in professional places, and they've done all the training that says, don't click on this, don't send, they've kind of learned about the scam. So they're teaching their older family members, but, there's possibly an even younger generation who maybe their family hasn't talked to them and taught them. And so they don't know that.
Because remember, I agree with you 100%. Remember, the older generation, my generation and older, especially my culture and more traditional cultures, we don't believe in therapy. We just uploaded the episode with the new astronaut, the Palestinian American astronaut, and we talked about mental health and we talked about depression, and she was very, very open about it. And one of her struggles, that not able to have the support, the emotional support, to recognize that I have depression, because of the culture. It's like, no, you don't. Just walk it off, like, oh, my knee hurts, my foot hurts. Just walk it off. You're fine. You can play the game again, So that alone as a barrier and as a hindrance of, pursuing therapy, or I need help. She knew she needed help, and she's very smart. She's an intelligent engineer that worked with NASA, and she's launching in 2029. So it's not like she is, and it's not like she is just faking it or pretending, but her depression was interfering with her advancement in the field. It's like, what is wrong with me? So it could be an emotional triggers. It could be, chemical imbalance. It could be maybe her diet was off. Maybe she's overworking. Could be stress. But when she reached out to her family saying that, I think I need help, because this feeling is not going away, and they just poo-pooed it. It's like they disregard it. They said, no, you're fine. You're not fine. Because why? And I can say it from a Arab immigrant, being in the United States for 38 years, is because the essence of the traditional tribal connection and our culture is, do not hang your dirty laundry in public. Why would you pay somebody, a stranger, and confine in a stranger and trust that stranger to pour out you pour your heart out, where you have your rest of the family to talk to. But sometimes the problem is the family. The problem, the family pressure, the high family expectations could be, affecting you in, the guilt, the pressure, the loyalty, the discipline, the feeling of duty is really putting a lot of pressure in weighing you down, and you can't think straight. So that from a cultural, and I still see it in, just even third generation Americans, here, because that culture at home, the home dynamics is still very traditional and very strict. And then they go out there and they say, well, I don't feel this way. Maybe I can get therapy. And the family is like, no, you can't get therapy. And it's really, really sad. And then they spiral and they start manifesting physical symptoms. Then the family are like, okay, now you're concerned. They're not eating. They're not getting out of bed. They're getting sick a lot. Then they get really, really concerned. So, I agree with you. That's my point as far as, generation. We do transfer that power to the young ones as like, don't go there. Don't trust this. Don't trust that. But what we're doing by teaching them this, we are creating, right? We are shifting the balance, and we are creating, very stressed out generation. So that gets me to my next question. From your point of view, the reason why, you've been practicing for about 12 years, you see a very higher attendance in therapy right now. And is it because the family structure needs to be strengthened in our culture as American, or because they just don't have the emotional skills inside their home to deal with things? So is it external? Is it internal? Is it that there's a cultural thing happening, or is it that it's maybe both? I think it could definitely be possibly both. Our external environment, our culture, our society plays a role in what's happening, on a smaller level within ourselves, or within our small family, or within our small community, within our university, within our, friend group. It's all kind of affecting each other. Most of the time, the people that I see currently in the practices that I'm in right now, I don't see people who are required to come to therapy. So most of the time when people come, it's because they want to be there. And it's usually, because the majority of my clients are very motivated. The students, the college age students, many of them are very motivated and go-getters. But then there are some who, are like, I truly need help. The example of the person you were talking about coming from, it sounds like you said an Arab family. It's interesting how dynamics and culture works. To go to the family and to say, hey, I need some help. And then to
to kind of be turned down from receiving help from the family. But the cool thing about therapy, and I understand families work and maybe you have to get permission in some situations. But the interesting thing about therapy is that it's confidential. So a lot of times when I'm working with like different ethnic groups of people, I will emphasize it's confidential, meaning I cannot repeat or share any of the information. There are some exceptions, depending on like safety and things like that and like the legalities of that. But for the most part, everything is completely confidential. And so nobody has to know. You can come to therapy. You can secretly pay. You can pay with cash. You could pay, straight from your bank account versus an insurance. So nobody has to find out if a family member's paying for the insurance. And so, yeah, you can make it a secret if needed. But the important part, if other people are saying you're fine, the important part is to listen to yourself and see if you really don't feel like you're okay and you really feel like you need the help, to listen to that voice that's saying that.
So that's a really good point. So what are the symptoms you think, like if you would write down a laundry list of the thing, if you feel this way, if you notice this, if you notice that, you're going to need therapy, especially with like I said, the new college students. It sounds like the majority of your patient pool is that, was it Gen Z or the iGens? Gen Z. Yeah.
Gen Z. Yeah. In my office, I have a sign that says Zoomer slang because they have their own slang words that sometimes they'll say something to me and I'm like, wait, what does that mean? I don't know if you've heard it. Like,
they do have their own language and they do have their own slang. So what would be the things that they need to look for in order to say, because a lot of them, if they're in college, some of them are far away from home, they're out of state. So they can't just go home and discuss it and come back. There might be a, crisis moment that I need therapy. What would that be?
Oh, a crisis moment. How I would define a crisis is if you are experiencing let's say suicidal plans. You have a plan for suicide. You want to end your life. If you want to end someone else's life, you have a serious plan to do that. I would also say a crisis is probably if you're experiencing, you're hearing things, you're seeing things that you don't think are really there. Maybe you're having thoughts that you're not sure if they're true, like paranoia. I think another crisis would be something like if you're struggling with housing or basic needs like food, shelter, things like that. I would say or if there's been a situation, like you're in a dangerous situation, like a traumatic thing has happened. I mean, I would consider those things a crisis to get immediate help for. And locally, there's probably a phone number you have locally where you could call and get connected immediately. If worst comes to worst, you can call 911 and get immediate help. But as far as...
Yeah, but as far as therapy, I'm a student, I'm undergrad, I'm freshman, I left home. First I'm living on my own. And then the first semester I go through as fine. Second semester, struggling. Yeah. I come back sophomore year, I'm still struggling. So what are the signs that they need to remember to come to the conclusion, I need to seek therapy. Yeah. I need to talk to somebody.
Okay, so here's the thing. And people don't like this, okay? But I'm going to say it. So there are lists of things that people identify as saying, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, if you've got any of these. Okay. But I'm going to change it up because it's a problem if you think there's a serious problem. If you're worried that there's a problem, come for help. Okay. That could look like you're sleeping so much, your sleeping patterns have changed, whether it's sleeping more than what you used to or whether it's sleeping less than what you used to. It could look like that. For some people, they could be just sleeping a lot because they've been working a lot and they're super tired and exhausted. For some people, it could be they're not sleeping enough because they're so busy with things and it's just this 1 week or it's just this few days because it's exam time. It could be a change in your eating patterns. It could be a change in your isolation from friends. It could be usually some sort of change. But it's not always a mental health problem. But if in the back of your mind you're thinking, I feel like there is a problem and it keeps popping in the back of your head that you're struggling with something, and you either bring it up to others or you don't bring it up to others, and they say it's not a big deal, but you still feel like it's a big deal. That's the important part. If you feel like you need help, then reach out for help.
So you did mention you have a full-time job, and then you're doing your own practice as part-time. So how different is the full-time from the part-time as far as, the dynamics, the patient pool, the approach?
Yeah. So, where I work at my full-time job, it is completely, university. Majority of them are undergraduates. So freshmen, sophomore, juniors, seniors. I do also see a lot of graduate students, who are getting their master's or their, doctorate. And then in my private, those students at my full-time practice, they are come from many different circumstances. Some of them are very in high socioeconomic status, and some are in lower economic statuses. And so, but all of them come, and the university pays for the majority of the sessions. Whereas in my private practice, these are people who are finding me from different therapy sites, and they're paying either with insurance or out of pocket paying. And I only do teletherapy, so I see these people from all over just the state of Alabama, and so they also come from many different backgrounds. The majority of them are coming from families. They're like adults who are beyond college, and they have their own children. And they're struggling with daily life of either raising children, being a parent, maybe struggling with a divorce or a new relationship, and just kind of figuring out how to adjust to those things.
Now, it's fascinating to me that, with all the, the information out there, the web, and that's a really important point. People are still trusting that one-to-one human connection to go talk to a therapist, because my patients, they Google everything, especially the Gen Zs and iGen, and I tell them, stop Googling everything. Don't go to WebMD, because there's a lot of
ChatGPT is their therapist.
Oh my God. Yeah, exactly. So it's fascinating that they still come to see me. They still come to see you as a therapist, because sometimes the data or the information they're getting, it does not make sense to them. It's like, I need to go ask a professional. I need to talk to, a person. But we talked a lot about, family, therapy, and I want to shift to that marriage therapy. And my question to you is, what is the number one these days? And I see a lot of young families. I have relationship with people. I've been treating them since they were 6 years old. Now they're married, they have kids, and I watch. It's absolutely beautiful. Watch them, the transformative, role and their journey through life. But, I saw them struggle, stumble, and pick up, and some of them got divorced, with young kids. Some of them became single parents, and their needs have changed, and their financial and economical position have changed, and they needed more help than before, when they were married, or they needed more help as they are married, more than when they were single and living with their parents. So even for the state of Alabama, what is it that the young, couple, as far as marriage, what are the challenges right now, just generically? Of course, you cannot disclose a specific that you deal with as a therapist.
When I see these couples coming in for therapy, oh my goodness, a lot of times it's these things have stayed consistent. There might be some extra factors like COVID that kind of add into some problems, or maybe like reveal a problem. And so a lot of it could be, cheating on each other or considering cheating on each other. It could be just arguing with each other. I don't know how to resolve these arguments. We're having arguments all the time. Help us to resolve it. It could be, I'm just not sure if you're the right person for me. I married you 30 years ago, and now I'm thinking, this is not something I want to continue anymore. So many different, or maybe, you were somebody in the beginning and you've changed, and so many different reasons. It could be kids, like we don't know how to parent our children. We want to do it a certain way, but I want to do it a different way, but I want to do it this other different way. So, just like maybe parenting differences. Mm-hmm.
It sounds like certain things never really change, because those are the things that I witnessed through like in the 80s and the 90s. So, and it's fascinating. It doesn't really matter. We were talking again about the digital world. It doesn't matter.
Yes. That's what's different.
Exactly. But still they have the same marital issue. Like you've changed, you're not the same person. We have a different mindset about like how to raise our children. Those are the things my parents went through. It's like, they need to go to college here. No, they need to go to college there. But why? I'm not, wasting my time on this. I'm not paying money for this. This is not worth it, because they have different personalities. They see different values in different things. Their values and belief system taps into how I'm going to transfer that power to my kids, because that's just my belief system. So it's fascinating. But I guess, what is the age range when it comes to marriage therapy in your practice? Like how wide the range, or is it mostly young couple?
In my private practice, it's range from, I don't see children in my private practice. I see families, and the majority of them are adult children, but some of the younger children, they'll have their own therapist, and then we'll kind of come together as a family. But ranges from college age adults, really, to I've seen maybe the oldest person's been in their 60s.
Wow, so you do have a wide range.
Yes. And older people, teletherapy could be helpful for people who are, older than their 60s and their 70s, 80s. But I imagine, I haven't worked with them, but I imagine maybe they need a little bit of help setting up, unless they're very capable of figuring out how to do technology. But it could be helpful depending on how isolated they might be, if it's difficult for them to get out of the house.
Do you mentioned also there, you do see some ethnic group, right? There's ethnic background in some of the groups that you see. Do you find yourself, like, as a therapist, I always wonder that, do you constantly have to switch hats? Like your style of approach is a little bit different. Do you have to psych yourself up and prep yourself? Like, okay, this comes from the Dominican, Mexico, Cuba, Latin America, or is it like China, Asia? It's a lot, Vietnam. There's a lot of Vietnamese people there. Of course, there's the cultural, traditional, societal belief system that, do you find yourself kind of switching, and is that exhausting for you?
Oh my goodness. So, I'm such a curious person that it's easy for me to be like, okay, how does this work? How does that work? In your family, like, what are the cultural norms? What are like the faux pas that would not be okay? And I'm always asking and inquiring and figuring out. And with each of my clients, it's different. Even if they come from America, their families are very different from one another. And so I have a system of remembering, okay, this is the person who came in, with the family that's like this. And I kind of keep track of it to remember. And I think there are times when I do struggle with, wait, did you tell me this? And I kind of like, the client will remind me, okay, it's like this, it's like that. Or, so truly, everybody is different, and I have kind of like a system as a therapist for trying to remember who is who and what is what. But a lot of times I'm just so curious and interested that as the person is talking and giving me their story and we're getting more in details, I can remember like the dynamics of, we don't talk to dad like this, but we can talk to brother like this, or we can, the different.
So it sounds like you are learning as you go too, and having those ethnic, background, or patient from ethnic backgrounds are adding to your expertise and your toolbox, how to learn things. But
yes.
How to do things. I mean, learning things and how to do things with them in order to render that service to them. But do you feel sometimes, being from, Middle Eastern, Lebanese, Palestinian background, you're like second or third generation, right? American. Do you tap into that? Does it come across as like, oh, that was really helpful? I remember learning that when I was a kid.
learning
being
that
like
when I was,
empathetic and sympathetic. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, oh, I get it. Like, or reminds you, it's like, oh my God, that's something like I used to feel when I was a kid.
oh yes, there are so many times when I'm working with a client and something reminds me of something from my past. Yes, absolutely. And it can be difficult sometimes to kind of separate, my experience from theirs if it reminds me so much of mine. But a lot of times what I do with that is, for instance, let's say I'm working with an Arab client and I have an assumption. I'm like, okay, I know how my family works. Maybe it takes me, let's just give an example. It takes 10 minutes to say goodbye. It takes 10 minutes at the table, and then it takes 10 minutes at the door, and then it takes 10 minutes at the porch, and then it takes 10 minutes by the car. Okay, so might be my experience. So I might inquire with the client about this. Is this how your family works? And even if it's not an Arab client, let's say it's a Hispanic client, I might inquire. I might say, I might be thinking, I know how my family works. Is it the same way in your family? I might ask a question about it. And usually when I'm asking, it's usually because it's relevant to the thing they're coming into therapy for. And just to see, is this the same or is it different? And does it matter to why they're here in therapy?
So you do find it helpful to relate and become like interested in what they're going through and relate and share that. It's like, okay, my family, sometimes we do that. Does that sound like it's the same thing that you are going through, that kind of thing? So,
and sometimes it's not helpful. Sometimes it's not helpful because if I don't catch myself, like if I assume this is how it is for you, but I'm wrong and I don't ask the question, then I get it wrong. So it could be both helpful and not helpful.
That's interesting. Yeah, I never thought about it that way because you would think like, oh my God, I gotta, dig into my tool bag to get that tool and the skill trying to help my client because, you are, you have the duality of, in the world because you've seen it as a child, being an Arab, that conservative culture. And then somebody comes in from conservative culture and you think it's like, I totally understand where they're going, where they're coming from and what they're going through. So I always thought that, would it make it easier as a therapist to be from a different culture and assimilated in the U.S. society and you're a therapist? Do you have the upper hand? Because you do have that, like knowledge from. Yeah, exactly. It's like, I know a lot of secrets. How y'all, as you say in the southern states, that y'all, you deal with this, like that mindset, So, and it stems, like we say in this episode, like mastering an unlimited mindset by eliminating limited beliefs. But those limited beliefs, sometimes the traditional, societal belief system can be hindering, very, very limiting. And it sounds like some of those clients from ethnic backgrounds, they've been so limited. It's also like I call it the psychological and emotional shackles that you have to break out of it. And it took me, oh my God, like, 20 years to figure this out. Now, I have a life coach and I have a spiritual coach too, that I meet with them regularly, to say that it's not because I'm against therapy by all means, but it just, I thought, and I'm going to have them also on the podcast. They're amazing, amazing women, to talk about the difference between, you're a family and, marriage and family therapist, and they are the life coach. And we're gonna try to define the difference between what a life coach is, what a therapist is, what a spiritual coach is, what a life coach, and so forth, so on. So, I think those are going to be very, very helpful. Hopefully, our listeners and will have fun with it. So, I guess my last question to you: do you think that therapy these days, the way that it's used for? So the therapy back, probably we were talking about, let's just keep it simple, post-COVID, pre-COVID and post-COVID is used a little bit different, just from what some of the patients that that tells me about why they seek therapy. I have a patient, just a quick example in a short story. She's in her 60s about 65 when COVID hit. Very strong female, old school, strong, takes care of her grandkids and all that. Post-COVID, she fell into depression. Post-COVID. And then she went into therapy the first time of her life. She was about 66, 67. And then she was on three medications, 1 for anxiety, 2 for depression. And she developed panic attacks. Now, why is that important from the dental point of view? Because how did I find out? She came one day and she has broken 4 teeth. I'm like, whoa, time out. You never break teeth. You are in impeccable health. Like, I haven't done dentistry on her for maybe 10 years. She comes in for her cleanings. Everything is great. She maintained very well. She's very, very old school. She does the baking soda brushing and all that.
Wow.
And I said, what happened? She started crying. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I gave her a hug and all that. Oh my gosh, she broke my heart. And she was so embarrassed. It affected her confidence because some of the teeth that she broke was front teeth. And she goes, I don't know what's going on. I think I'm dying. I'm like, no, you're not dying, but tell me what happened. So went over her medical history. We found out that she was taking these medications. I was like, okay, what is going on? So she told me the whole story post-COVID. And I said, why? She goes, Dr. Slava, I have no idea why. It just hit me as like a brick wall. I woke up one day. I did not want to get out of bed. I was so depressed. I wasn't take care of my grandkids. I didn't want to cook a meal. She used to bake all the time and bring us muffins to the office. Completely different person. And we found out because of her psychological and emotional state, condition, she had to take all these medications. Those medications, the side effect is dry mouth. And because of dry mouth, she kept breaking these teeth. And now she has to dump more money into her mouth to restore it because she's so embarrassed about it, about the appearance and the look of her mouth. And that made her even more depressed. It was like, I don't have this kind of money. I'm retired, And then going through the medical, dental appointments, we had to gauge her anxiety too, and her medication. So we had to regulate that and collaborate with her doctor. So it was so complicated. It became this it went from this simple person, happy-go-lucky, this little grandma that retired, into this complicated person that's dragging all that baggage with her. And that really impacted her family responsibilities, her duties towards her because she used to care for her grandkids. She was the daycare. She couldn't take care of them because she will get depressed and pull herself and go take naps, and she can't watch them anymore. How she recovered, financially. Now she has financial strains, stress. She has to invest in her mouth, invest time in the dental chair. Go through the pain, go through anesthesia. I hate this. I don't want to go through it. And she'll cry. She's like, I caused this to myself. I'm like, no, don't blame yourself. But until this day, now COVID, 2020, now 2026, until this day, when I see her, she has no idea where was the triggering event or what was the triggering event that caused this. She woke up one morning and she just couldn't function. That is mind-boggling. But I just wanted to share that with you as an expert of how what I see, the drastic impact of post-COVID on some of the patient. And it doesn't discriminate. It's ageless. I mean, of course, the younger were the worse. Did you see that in your practice, whether your full-time practice or the part-time practice, the people are just switch overnight, like 180 degrees impact?
Usually when that happens, there's been some sort of event that's been so traumatic for them. And so for some people around COVID, when it first started in like March 2020 is when things started to get locked down, and panic. And so, yes, during that time, it was definitely a lot of people who coming in like immediately kind of panicking about things. But it sounds like, and I imagine for many people, that things start to slowly happen. Maybe one day they wake up and they have the sense of maybe like doom because of COVID. And then, slowly over time, things don't feel as, enjoyable as they used to. Maybe, if somebody's experiencing the dry mouth, maybe one tooth breaks. And that leaves you then feeling insecure or worried about what you look like, insecure about what you look like, and maybe not wanting to talk with people. And so then maybe that means you stay in your house more. And maybe that means now you feel even more isolated, maybe another tooth. And that's just an additional. And now you haven't seen your family members, and now you haven't seen your friends, and you feel even more isolated. And now the children are driving you crazy because we're not going outside anymore. And, so things build on top of the next thing until all of a sudden you find yourself in a hole thinking, how did I get here? But slowly over time, there have been little things. And in therapy, that's when we will kind of unpack all those things and go, wait, so many more things have happened. It's not just one. It's not just two. It's all these. And then you look at it and you go, wow, I can do something with this now that I can see it a little clearer.
So do you guys, because of, we started with the data that 11.5% to 13.8% of children aged 5 to 17 are currently receiving therapy between 21 and 22 from the 10% in 2019. So to me, it sounds like that was the triggering event around the world, or at least the impact here in the United States. And this is from the CDC. So of COVID, as therapists, did you guys have to almost go through a different training to relate to that triggering event for COVID, or you just winged it as you went?
Well, I definitely winged it. That's for sure. But there were a lot of discussions among the therapy community. One thing that I did was I had to take a training on teletherapy. So there are certain things we have to do with teletherapy. We have to make sure they're in the state of Alabama. I have to get evidence of that. I do have to, confirm every single session. I confirm their location, making sure that they're here. That's one thing, making sure that they're safe. So there's a lot of things that you have to consider in teletherapy that we don't normally consider when, for instance, like the lighting, that I can see them, that they're not driving while we're having a discussion, that we wouldn't have to really care about if you're in my office in front of me. So it's interesting because my practice is teletherapy, my private practice, but then my full-time job is in person. So, I get the both and the different dynamics, but people really do want in-person therapy now. Which I was surprised. I thought maybe after COVID, there would be more people who want teletherapy. In the beginning, it was like that. Because they were afraid of a lot of people were coming in because they were afraid of getting sick or getting their family members sick. But now people are like, I would prefer to see somebody in person. There is a different feeling that you get when you have somebody in front of you versus a screen. But I don't know if I answered your question. I'm sorry.
No, you did. No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely you did, because it goes back to, it's like a full circle, what we were talking about, in the beginning, as far as, people trusting people trusting digital device. It's fascinating that I think people got sick and tired of not seeing people. Mm-hmm. And that really the basic fundamental foundation of humanity. Human has to talk to humans, but you guys had to deal with, how to deal with telehealth and mm-hmm. being as a remote provider. I couldn't do that because dentistry, we can't do it remotely.
Truly.
We can take, we can take phone calls and we can, decipher the whole situation, because we couldn't bring everybody in the clinic because of the aerosols and exposures and all that. So, right. But we had to do that, which is not unusual for us because we get emergency calls all the time. And, so that wasn't really tough or hard. So there wasn't a relearning process for that, but it was more than usual because a lot of patients I'm not comfortable coming in. Can you just figure this out for me? I'm like, mm-hmm. Well, I really literally, I cannot diagnose on the phone because I have to see it. Yeah. I have to wiggle it. I have to look at it and see if there's bleeding, laceration, inflammation. Is it red? Is it pussy? I don't know. And some of them actually start sending us pictures. This is what it looks like. Can you please tell me, because I can't come in? And that continued until after COVID, for a while, for about a year, 18 months. Yeah.
A year. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the same thing for my or like for therapy, is that the kind of nervousness about COVID probably lasted a year afterwards, 2021, 2022 even.
But it's interesting. So when you, in your full-time job, taking care of the college students, there's no telehealth. It has to be in person, right?
No, we do telehealth, but the majority of students do want in person.
That's interesting. That's the new generation too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a rise of attitude that the trust for digital devices. And like I said, remember, I started thinking about being conned or scammed. I think there is a wave of attitude that I rather see you because I don't want to pay somebody. They're not professional. They're not expert. They're not qualified. And then I get scammed.
That could definitely be a possibility. I think that's a whole conversation we could have about the digital stuff, because there's probably a lot of people who are like, I'm afraid I could get scammed. And there's probably a lot of people who are too trusting. And now I think we're all too trusting, honestly. I mean, considering how much our phones are listening and who's listening and how we're being tracked.
The phone application, the more application they give us, because they want us to trust it more. Your phone can do everything, and you don't have to rely or depend on human. Your phone is with you. It's kind of like that comfort thing, right? It's you. It's part of you. It can take care of you. It can do a lot for you. So use the phone. And by the way, that's why you do upgrades, right? More application, more apps. Look what it can do for you, because you are trying to raise that trust level in order to rely on it. It's like it's so dysfunctional, because it's like a codependent relationship.
Yeah.
Like if I don't have my phone, I'm not okay. If I have my phone, I'm okay. Well, you can't do that. But I would love to bring you back we talk about social media and digital, the digital world, the impact on mental health from your,
my gosh.
Seriously, that will be a full, a full episode that we can
truly
probably talk to for hours. So the last thing is, what would your advice be for a college student that is struggling? I know you're going to say seek therapy, but above and beyond that.
No. I don't know if I would say that, because what I would say is, listen to yourself and what you think that you need, because there are some people out there who people are telling them you need to go to therapy, but they're thinking, I feel like I'm okay. In my perspective, if you feel like you need help, then you should come. And if you feel like, no, I got it, I feel like I'm put together and things are going okay for me, then I'm not going to encourage you to do something that doesn't feel right for you. That's what I say. Listen to yourself.
Yeah, and I heard that a lot. Trust yourself, exactly.
Yes.
And I think confidence in being or having the intelligent IQ, the emotional IQ, and the high level of self-awareness. I think and I love them all, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the young professionals right now have no self-awareness, because they rely on the digital devices to tell them that, you're going to be okay. If they get triggered, they go on Instagram. It's like, let's see what everybody else is doing. If they get all depressed, like, let's see what I can buy. You know what I'm saying? Or what's new out there. Let me see if let me see if there's an app that can help me. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way in a lot of circumstances or a lot of situations. Mm-hmm. So where people can find you. So your business is Your Story Therapy, which is interesting because our platform is based on storytelling. But where can people find you?
Yes, they can find me at my website, yourstorytherapyllc.com. They could find me. I do have some social media platforms on Instagram, Facebook, and a TikTok, even though I don't know if I trust TikTok right now, but it's there. And so they can find me there, and they can even find me on different therapy directories like Psychology Today. I'm also on Open Path Collective, which is a place where you can receive a discount for therapy if that's needed, and then inclusivetherapist.com.
That's awesome. But what's your name under social media? Is it your story therapy also?
Yes, it's just like your story therapy it's like underscore in between. Oh my goodness. You know, Dr. Slava, I'm not, I don't even know my own.
You gotta know
That's how much I don't go. That's how much I don't go on social media. Okay. So on Instagram, I'm your underscore story underscore therapy underscore LLC.
Okay, very fancy. I like it. I like it a lot. Well, thank you for coming on,
Yes.
and I hope you agree to come on. We got to talk about digital social media.
That sounds like a very fun and interesting conversation. And one day I would love to talk to you about anxiety. That's one of my favorite topics.
Let's do anxiety first then.
It would be fun, I think.
Yeah, and I would totally want to hear about it because anxiety in my family and in my culture does not exist.
Oh, yeah.
You ate something wrong, or you did not sleep enough, or you need to pray more.
Right. Yeah, it's just...
Let's do that. Promise?
Yeah, let's do it. Yes, I'll shake on
Pinky
it.
promise. All right.
Pinky promise.
Awesome. Awesome. So unfortunately, we have reached the end of our hour. As a reminder, these episodes are uploaded weekly on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube by the Mindset Mastery Moment. So if you have enjoyed this, please like, share, and hit the notification bell. That way you won't miss any episodes. And it's free. This is an independent platform, and it is sponsored by humanity and supported by everyday people stories. So thank you for listening and watching. Hope to see you next time. This is Slava, the Jordanian.